Welcome everyone to the Bent by Knowledge podcast, where we will dig into what current research and the Bible actually have to say about exercise and good nutrition. Well, welcome everybody to my very first podcast series. This podcast series, I'm going to bring on a whole bunch of professionals, nutrition and exercise professionals, and we're going to talk about any and everything to educate you on what research and what scripture actually has to say about exercise and nutrition. So today I have registered dietitian Stephanie Gipson on with us. Stephanie, I know from my Florida State University days, I was a PhD student and you were a master's student. Is that right?
In undergrad.
Undergrad. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And you were helping me with my PhD study, my sleepover study. So it's great because I haven't seen you since then. So it's really good to see you and chat with you. I'm happy to have you here. Yeah, today, Stephanie is going to be talking a little bit about mindset and mindset with nutrition today, but she is also going to be talking about mindset with exercise. And then the third episode is going to be practical application to better put those good habits into your lifestyle. So Stephanie, could you in a short way introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you for having me on. I'm super excited. I think I told everybody I knew, but yeah, so I am currently a registered dietitian working at a facility called Usarium. So basically we do military nutrition research. I've done my bachelor's and master's at Florida State, where I met Brittany. And yeah, here I am doing what I love, both a combination of exercise and nutrition research. But I do coaching on the side because I love practical application of what I actually do research on.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And so, yeah, you mentioned that you worked at Usarium. We were just talking about how I know some of the other folks up there in Usarium. You guys do amazing work. And I would love to, at some point, dig a little bit more into the research that you do down there, because even though you do it for soldiers and things like that, I think it applies to a lot of what we do with exercise and nutrition. So that's awesome. Can you talk a little bit more about your own private practice and what you do there?
Absolutely. So I've been doing, I was a personal trainer for 6 years, and then things got hectic, but I still, of course, wanted to do things. So I transferred online because I was still able to help people, in the afternoons and things like that when I had some free time. And then recently, once I've gotten my RD, I've added that to my practice. And so for the past 6 months, I've been building that out, and I love it because I can help people on both sides of nutrition and exercise because I understand both realms, and I absolutely love it. I love applying what I know and doing research to people in real life. And so that's kind of what's brought me here today.
Yeah. And I love that conversation too, because, and I'm sure this will come out in all of my podcast episodes, but as a researcher and you with experience in research, I came to a point in my professional career where I was like, does research even matter if we're not doing our part and getting it out to the people that matter, really? Because it's like at a certain point, you do it for yourself or for the university that you work for. And if you're not doing your part, like you're doing with your private practice and really helping people apply that information, that's what really matters. So that's amazing that you're doing that. But to get into the meat of this conversation, we're going to be talking about mindset for nutrition, like I mentioned before. And I wanted to talk about this topic, especially in light of the holiday season coming up and the New Year's resolution crowd and all that, because I think that anybody can will themselves into making healthy lifestyle changes. For instance, I can, in the new year, set myself a New Year's resolution and say, I'm going to join a gym and I'm going to work out 3 to 5 times per week. And I'm going to clean up my entire diet. And I believe that part of the reason why we fail so often in those resolutions is because we are just willing ourselves with pure human strength to do that. And we're not actually doing our part to change our mindset going into it. And so if I can't change my mindset, I'm going to have my old mindset, which is I don't even really like exercise. I don't really like practicing good nutrition. And then I'm going to get into it still not like it, and then fail. And so part of what we're going to be talking about today is setting your mindset for nutrition, good nutrition habits to be able to best sustain those behaviors. So, what, Stephanie, do you see as some of the top barriers to not practicing what we would call good nutrition?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it has a lot to do with those like New Year's resolutions. Just like you said, we're going to will ourselves to make all these changes, go to the gym, eat a perfect diet, and all those sorts of things. And so what we end up doing is we completely have a 360 of our lives without any plan. Not necessarily, we don't think about the long-term sustainability of that plan because weight loss or changes of the body are seen as such short-term goals that we don't realize that this is something that we need to do for lifelong. And if we can't discover those habits that we can do sustainably, then it's just not going to work. And so it's not about doing everything at once, but it's about doing one thing at a time so that we can make those habits sustainable and long term. I think that's one of the biggest barriers I see, um, just even on a day to day basis.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's good, especially like you said with the New Year's resolution crowd, because it's sort of like people think that one day is going to make a difference. Like going from 2020 to 2021, this one day I'm going to change everything. And I think what you said is really good in there, in that we can't just do every single change in one day. Like we have to think about one thing at a time. So that is
Mhm.
definitely a top barrier and probably part of the reason why a lot of people struggle. Do you know of any other barriers you can think of with people not practicing good nutrition?
Absolutely. And I think it comes down with their own personal mental limitations. Um, I don't know if most people know what a habit is. So we have these what called habit loops where you have some sort of cue and trigger, and then you go into the actual response or action. Then we have a reward. But what ends up happening, we have these little things called habit loopholes, is what I like to call them. And something else I've seen other people coin that term is maybe um, I don't have time right now, or we make exceptions for situations, or we set ourselves up with, I can't control myself around chocolate, or you automatically, oh, I don't like to work out, or working out doesn't work for me. So we already set ourselves up with these mental limitations. And so that's setting up for self sabotage because if we're not in the right mindset to actually facilitate positive change within ourselves, it's not going to happen because we're going to constantly be setting ourselves back with these self sabotaging tendencies or habit loopholes, if you will. Because every time we start a habit, we're going to break it one way or another because we've already made in our mind we have these exceptions, but these exceptions happen all too frequently and then we're not consistent with it. So even though let's say you started this new diet for 30 days, but every Wednesday you went to a work luncheon and had this extravagant meal. Every Friday you had, a date night, and the weekends you had some sort of party. So 4 or 5 days out of the week, you were already not following your guidelines. And so now 30 days have passed and you're like, why haven't I seen changes? And it's because we've made these loopholes and weren't essentially consistent with the habits we wanted to make.
Yeah, yeah. And that's good. And in that situation, the one that you pose with, because I find that a lot with myself too. In in my setting and all the stuff that I have going on, you go into a week thinking that you're gonna have all these healthy
Mhm.
choices, like let's say nutrition, but then you have, like you're saying, a work meeting or happy hour with your girlfriends that comes up and things like that. So when you're talking about these habit loopholes, which is so cool because I've never heard of that phrase, I really like that because I can see it playing in my life and people's lives that I talk to too. How do you, in that specific instance, how do you reset your mindset to go into that week in a better on a better note?
I think it's first of all being self-aware that you have these limiting beliefs within yourselves and being conscious of it. So, I guess kind of tying back into those New Year resolutions, we're going to do all these things. Doing all these things takes a lot of self-awareness and a lot of conscious energy, which most people don't have because we're extremely busy nowadays. We have work, we have family, we have kids, and everything's going on. And we have this big decision to put all this mental energy into all these new health and eating habits. And so what ends up happening is that we put all this energy in. That energy only lasts a few days because then we got to transfer it to some other things. And so we have to become self-aware of what we're doing and being conscious in the present moment. So I don't even think it's taking it week by week, it's taking it day by day.
Mm.
So whenever I have someone start a nutrition program, the very first week, I don't implement anything to my clients. The first thing we do is we identify how our week looks, because we have in our mind what that week looks like to us. We can recall it. We're probably recalling the best days of eating and those types of things. But if we actually take a moment and throughout that week, we're very conscious of what we're doing, we kind of determine why we're doing it, those sorts of things, make notes. I ate out this day because I didn't have this planned, or I went to the vending machine because I was running late, those types of things. That way we can identify the problem before we get started. Because if
Mm.
not, we're just kind of guessing and trying to apply all these crazy nutrition habits that we read online, and then we end up failing because they don't work for us and we haven't even identified what our own problem is. So becoming actually self-aware what we're doing and why we're doing it, and then we can start making those habit changes slowly. We don't need to do everything at once, one habit at a time.
It's funny that you say that. I've never thought, it just clicked now that you said that, because when we go into something like an exercise program, like let's say it's a squatting program, we never say, okay, my baseline max is 135. I can put 135 on my back. I can do one repetition. I want to go from there baseline to hitting 315. But I never go like week one never looks like I'm putting 315 on the bar and I'm going to squat it. It's like you're saying, a progressive build. But in nutrition, for whatever reason, we do have that mindset where we're like, I'm not going to take this slow tapered approach. I'm going to go from 0 to 60 in 2 seconds. And it's never sustainable that way. But that's an interesting, because I never thought of it like that. But in exercise, you would never do that. You would kill
Yeah,
yourself and
yeah.
you would never sustain it. So really cool. All right. So from barriers, what do you think are some of the top facilitators with why people continue good nutrition? Facilitators now are basically the opposite of barriers, which are they're, if you want to think about it this way, like things that help you sustain healthy behaviors or any behavior really.
Yeah, absolutely. That is actually something that I've been always looking into, because I always look at people and I see, okay, this person has been sticking to their exercise routine for years, but this person cannot find sustainability in their exercise routine. Why is that? Why can this person eat their vegetables every day? Why is this person having trouble even eating like an apple? And it's something that I'm always thinking about, and I don't have an exact answer. But one thing I've noticed is that people who stick to something for very long have made the understanding that it is a part of their life.
Mm.
It is not an instantaneous luxury. And so the way the brain works is that we have this wonderful release of dopamine when we like something. Our body really likes that short-term satisfaction. However, if we can find, whether it's an internal or external motivator that is going to not necessarily have that instant release of dopamine, but have that, I guess, underlying why you want to do something that's going to be your driving motivator, finding that, holding on to it, and understanding that this is forever. Like eating vegetables every day, that's something you're going to do. Maybe it's walking 30 minutes every day. That's just part of your life. It's a non-negotiable.
Mm.
It's almost like having a doctor's appointment with you every single day. It's non-negotiable. You have to get up, you have to walk, you have to move, because how it makes you feel. You feel better, you're more productive, those types of things. So it's defining that motivator that is going to be important enough for you to stick to it. And that's going to look different for everybody. But something that I've noticed is that most of the time it's not aesthetic. We think of health and nutrition, exercising as some sort of weight loss goal, aesthetic goal, things like that. And I think those can be good motivators at the start to get something in place. But to make something sustainable and long term, it's got to be something that means worthwhile for you. For example, you want to walk your daughter down the aisle. You want to be healthy enough to do that. Your dad had a heart attack at 45. And so you're in your 40s and your daughter's going to get married in a few years. You want to be there. Maybe you're a teacher and you enjoy playing with your kids and doing all these activities, but you find yourself, you can't even get on the floor with them to do a reading lesson. So it's finding something that just hits home with you that you can't live without, or it just breaks you if you can't have it within your life.
Yeah, and it's good that you say that because I found that in my experience too, the bigger than body composition and body weight goals and being a facilitator is external drivers. So and I'll probably talk about this later. We'll probably talk about this later, but I feel like sustainability, if it's something within you, like for instance, I want to lose weight because I want to look better or because I want to look good in a bikini or things like that. It's much less sustainable than if you were to say, I want to lose weight because like you're saying, I want to be able to kneel down and play with my grandkids and not be in pain trying to get back up and things like that. And so I think if it's outward, which biblically is how we're supposed to love anyway, we're supposed to love other people. I think it's so much more sustainable. So I love what you said there. That's really good.
Yeah.
So I found too that with nutrition, less is more. And you being a dietitian know this all too well, is that our world is flooded with information. It's crazy. I remember back in the day, like bodybuilding.com was one of the only platforms. And now it's like bodybuilding.com, every other blog post, any other website you can think of. And I think that that's a huge limitation for people developing a good mindset around nutrition, because if I'm flooded with this information, I'm so overwhelmed. I don't even know where to start. And so can you recommend to people how to filter out that information and how to get back into a proper mindset for nutrition without all of that information and noise?
Yeah. And that's a tough one because you're right. It's everywhere. Even your Aunt Carrie has something to say about what you're eating on Thanksgiving. I mean, there's always someone that knows something. And I truly believe that most people have inherently good intentions when they do this. But when you have everybody telling you something and it's all a little bit different, you get terribly confused. You don't know where to start. You constantly feel like you're failing because you can't do all these things. And so something I've even done with myself when I've felt myself getting into a little bit of that trap, because it is hard on you mentally when you're always having these messages, is I completely step back away from that environment. If it's a conversation that comes up with your family, it's as simple as saying, I don't want to discuss my weight right now, or I'm going to eat what I have on my plate, and then stop the conversation there. Most people have enough respect to end it or understand that you don't want to talk about it. And even when it comes to social media, your Facebook, your Instagram, whatever it may be, muting those sites temporarily, taking your time away from that information. And something that's important to note, when you are ready, once you've had enough time away from it, your mind has settled down, and you actually do come back to the space, it is important that you identify the people where the information you want to come from is valuable to you. So for example, it's not following every Fitspo on Instagram. It's not following every person who has a good looking body on Instagram. It's deciphering and being conscious of the information you let in. And that's going to be with anything outside of fitness and nutrition, in my opinion. You have to, in a world with so much content and information flooding our minds, we have to be aware of what we're taking in on a daily basis. And so look at a person's credentials, look at the way they talk. Are they simply marketing for their product? Because some people sound great. They sound like they know what they're talking about. And so you have to be able to look at them with a different point of view and see like, hey, are they providing me valuable information? Are they just trying to sell me a product? Do they have the qualifications and educations to give me this type of information? and those types of things. And so it's just limiting yourself at the information that you consume because it is so prevalent and it is everywhere. And I know that's not a easy task to do, but if you want to make that change, if you want to stop that flood of information, you have to be the person to do so.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. The consciousness and knowing that you have to do that, and I think a struggle in our world, our big barrier is that actually seeking professional help for diet at like a dietitian like yourself. If I were to go seek you for advice, you're much more expensive, let's say, than going on Instagram and following somebody that gives, low tier advice. So it's a huge barrier, but it does take awareness to say, I'm not getting the proper information and I do need to be able to take my health and know that there's value in my health and I may need to spend money to improve the value of my health or to improve my health.
Yeah, which is tough. And I understand that financial barriers are a thing. But something that I love is that there are government resources and things like that. Like, and a lot of people don't understand that WIC actually has a registered dietitians on hand for mothers, for breastfeeding, and specialists of that nature. So it is tough. And I think it's just being able to find those, or even us creating that awareness that those options are available as well.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. So I do see in this world too, in general, we tend to classify our behaviors as good or bad. And because we classify our behaviors as good or bad, we sometimes classify ourselves as good or bad. Like we draw those parallels. And this is definitely in the realm of nutrition too. So like I go out, I binge eat ice cream, and it's not that I compartmentalize that behavior as being bad. It's that because I do that, I think that I'm inherently bad. And I see that all the time. And realistically, that shouldn't be the case. So can you tell us about what you think about shifting your mindset with good versus bad habits versus good versus bad myself because of those habits?
Yeah, absolutely. And something that I tell my clients all the time, because they'll ask me like, is this food a good choice? Like, is this a healthier option? And is this a bad option? And I say, I always start out, it's not inherently bad. That is my go-to phrase because nothing is inherently bad. Food is made up of the basic compositions of carbs, fats, and proteins. And I explain it as it's the sum of what we eat those things. So for example, if you were to eat one cookie, that is not bad. That is not unhealthy because that is just carbs and fat, a little bit of protein in there, depending on your cookie. But same thing, if you were to eat an apple or even a salad, that's not going to make you instantaneously healthy. However, it is the summation of all those choices that you make, and it's tough because the fitness industry has not done a good job of identifying those things because we've labeled things as good or bad. And then we associate those good or bad foods with us being personally good or bad. So I do not use those in my vocabulary when I describe food or even events. So for example, I had a bad weekend. Whenever there's a client that says I had a bad weekend or I failed, I immediately reframe their mindset of do not say you had a bad weekend. Say that you had a weekend where you had more choices that had higher carbs or fats. I identify exactly what you did versus labeling as good or bad. Because if we identify ourselves as bad, it's almost again going back to those self-limiting beliefs where we're setting up ourselves to fail. And that's not what I want. And it is tough because you have to constantly remind yourself to not use those in your vocabulary. I still do it and I catch myself. And so there's no easy solution. It's just trying to identify and reframe what those words are and what food is, because food is not good or bad. It's not, food can't, cause a crime or anything like that. So
Yeah, no, it's good. And I always explain it to the people that I talk to. It's like, so health by definition is like literally your body's ability to live. And so calories, whether they're in the form of a little Debbie snack or a strawberry, are inherently healthy because those calories, whatever they are fueling my body to survive. And so we have like slandered all these health related words to fit what media needs or whatever who needs. But what you said too that struck me is in the media we and I've seen this, so you've probably seen this too. There are a lot of Vogels that look, or maybe they do, have a completely clean diet, and everything that they're putting out there that they're exposing you to is this perfect diet that I don't have any kind of what you would call cheat days or slip meals, whatever it is. And what that does to somebody that is normal, like myself and many, many people, is it gives you shame for what you do, which is part of the reason. And shame, scripturally, biblically, in any sense, is a way of isolating yourself from the world. And so if I see that you're doing all these good things, I'm comparing myself to you, I'm living in shame, I'm going to isolate myself and then completely drop off. And so that is never a good thing for sure. And so I think what you said, just like you said before in other statements, is identifying what's causing those behaviors and filtering them out properly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So I found personally that changing my mindset for nutrition requires me to recognize my patterns. I'm a huge patterns person. I personally tend to use food as a reward. Excuse me. I personally tend to use food as a reward. So I'll do something as small as completing an email, sent it off, and working at home, especially during this COVID season, I'll go into the kitchen and I'll be like, oh, I deserve this. And so that pattern of doing something, thinking I earned a reward and going to get food makes me go from a 2,000 calorie day to 3,000 calorie day. And it's just never a good thing. So what are your thoughts in recognizing patterns to help your mindset around nutrition?
There are a couple different ways, but first of all, I do think it's necessary. It's required because that I deserve something because I did something good. That's going to be another one of those habit loopholes. Have you ever had a stressful day and be like, I deserve a glass of wine, or I deserve a bowl of ice cream because I had a stressful day or I worked hard?
Every weekend.
And it happens all the time. And it's not that, those are not bad things. I'm not saying that you shouldn't reward yourself. And the thing about food is that food is more than fuel. I mean, food is religious, it's emotional, it's social. There's so much more that goes with food. And I think it's okay and it's important to recognize those things. However, it's also important to recognize that of those things, what are causing you to not implement a habit properly? What patterns are you consistently doing that are resulting in, you having a bowl of ice cream probably every day versus, every few days kind of thing, So
Mhm.
it's essential. You have to become aware and mindful of the decisions you're making and why you're making. And again, I'm not saying that you shouldn't reward yourself. There are absolutely times where I do buy myself a piece of cake or a cookie and I enjoy it because I accomplished something, whatever it may be, but it's identifying how often that happens, like what in my mind is considered a good thing or a good accomplishment. But there is also something else to realize is that there are other types of rewards out there. What other things make you feel good? What other things are fun to you? It's important that we also explore those options as well, which I do know has been extremely hard this year because we don't have as many options and we're stuck at our house and our option is food, you know?
Yeah.
So I think there is important to understand that there is grace, especially in times like these, when we still need some sort of satisfaction or happiness in our day. And if that's going to come by rewarding ourselves with food, that is 100% okay. But it's just identifying what that food is, why we're eating it, so we can notice if it becomes a negative eating behavior
Mhm.
versus more of a positive reward eating behavior.
Yeah, and I think what you said is good. I was thinking myself, typically I don't necessarily see my behaviors as bad until like you're saying you get to the point where it's like it is bad.
Mhm.
So like when I reward myself, and I can say this about a lot of other patterns that I see in other people, um It's okay because, and you mentioned this too, it's like you have to enjoy the things that are given to you, and that's scripturally too. Like we're called to enjoy the stuff that God has given to us. But when it goes from, for me, like enjoying some sweet thing that God put on this earth to enjoying 5 to 10 of those sweet things, it goes
Mhm.
from being a way to honor God to a form of gluttony and excess and sin and things like that. And so it is creating that boundary and recognizing those patterns. So um, if I had a long week and on Friday I say I want a glass of wine, I need to make sure that that's one glass of wine and like a light 4-ounce pour and not the whole bottle, maybe. And so, yeah, it's recognizing those patterns, but you have to have some sort of awareness to be able to say, I need to stop, I need to pull back. Um, and yeah, I think just awareness.
And I think just in today's age, how busy we are and how much we have going on, we have lost that perception of being present in the moment.
Mm,
So that self-awareness is not where it used to be. And so that's why it seems a little bit more of an effort now, because we're not used to being so self-conscious or so self-aware, being present in the moment kind of thing.
yeah. Oh gosh, that like I feel that deep in my soul because we'll talk about this a little bit later. I'm an Enneagram 7, so whatever I'm doing, I'm always thinking about the next thing. And it's so funny because it happens when I eat too. Like when I put something in my mouth, I'm always thinking about the next bite rather than that bite, like being present, like you said. It's crazy. So your conscious mind can be really powerful, especially compared to the hard wiring of our bodies. For instance, for whatever reason, every time I wake up from a nap, I go right into the kitchen and I look for carbs, things like sugar. And I think it's my consciousness telling me that tired equals I need energy equals give me the quickest form of energy possible, which is sugar. But I have to do some self-talk and realize that tired does not always mean hungry or you need to eat. So, can you tell us what you think about the conscious mind versus actual physiological cues and how you coach people to reset their mindset?
Yeah, absolutely. And you make a good point because you associate being tired with eating and then especially eating with sweets and those types of things. And that happens in many scenarios. And in today's age, just based with the abundance of food that we have, our physiological cues are not as prevalent or we don't even recognize them anymore because we've override them with all of these other things. And so where I always start with my clients is education.
Mm,
I teach them what food is, how much we need, based on like activity, female, male, and those types of things. And then we move forwards on how food affects us daily and understanding the base concepts of what food actually is and what it does for us as far as providing energy, building structural components, hormones, all those things. You are now able to respond now with a rational sense versus just purely a emotional sense of feeling.
mm,
That makes sense?
yeah.
So we can physically think something through because we understand the base physiological components of it versus I feel hungry when in reality we've associated that with tired. So I always find it, I love what I do because I get to combine a little bit more of a softer science, I suppose, if you will, with being conscious, being aware, being mindful, but also using the rational part of your brain to consciously make a decision so that we don't end up in those pitfalls, if you will, or in those scenarios where our conscious brain completely takes over based on emotion because at the end of the day, emotion does tend to override the rational brain. But if we can find some sort of information or think something through, it is easier. And then a person has full autonomy to make the decision based on their education and emotions so that they can fuel themselves properly or the best way they see fit.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's so funny. The first thing I thought of when you said that is that women are so emotionally driven. We are, as women, like all of our being is emotion. And so to think emotionally with food makes sense to some women. And that's probably part of the reason why, binge eating is a thing for comfort and all of that, rather than using what you know and your knowledge and applying that. So that's a good point. So there's also this all or nothing mindset where, and I've seen this all over the place too, and I'm guilty of it myself. If you have, let's say, a bad meal or a bad weekend, like we've said before, the rest of your day or the rest of your week, sometimes the rest of your month is completely destroyed. And so you're all in or you're all out. How do you coach people to reset their mindset with this problem?
Yeah, this one is probably the most common one I see. I'll start on Monday. I had a bad Friday, so the whole weekend's gone. And so I always use the analogy of, because when people have these things, events happen, they say, I fell off the wagon, right?
Mm,
So when they fall off the wagon, they think, okay, I have to start over from the beginning. But what happens is that every time they fall off the wagon, they start from the beginning and they never actually continue on their journey. They always end up in the
mm,
same spot. How I always reframe it is you're pulling over and you're taking time to rest. So let's say it was a family event and you were going to have some probably not the best nutritious food. And so you already accept that fact. You're going to eat the food, enjoy it because you need to enjoy that time with family. So you pulled over, you rested, you fixed your wagon if it was broken, and then you got right back on it. So instead of starting over, you just got back off where you started where you left off. And so you're actually just continuing on this journey. And so doing that, you lose that sense of failure, because that what makes us feel bad and then goes into that loophole of I'll just start on Monday, or it's not the right time, and kind of chunking everything out the window.
mm.
Because at the end of the day, health is a spectrum. It's not you're healthy or you're not. It's the summation of all the activities that you do daily that kind of equal who you are or what you are at that point in time. So for example, if the past year of my diet has been filled with mostly fast food, french fries, sweets, cookies, those types of things, my health is probably going to be probably at the not so great end of that spectrum, right? However, if I've had a mostly great diet, I've had my vegetables, my fruits, my proteins, I had some delicious meals in between, I'm probably going to be in the middle or a little bit on that healthier side of that spectrum. So it's being able to identify not a single moment or a single meal is going to equate your health, but understanding the summation of all your meals is going to place you somewhere on that spectrum.
Yeah, yeah. I like what you said about, I love that analogy with the horse and all that. Because going back to the squat analogy for exercise, I was thinking when you said this, when let's say you have a max protocol, you do, your 50%-ish weight for a warm up set, and then you build your weight until you get to that maximum weight. And
Mhm.
let's say, for instance, like that nutrition example with the wagon, you fall off. So you don't complete the rep, um, you don't get full depth, whatever it is, you re-rack, you reset. And in this case, you don't reset all the way to your warm-up weight.
Mhm.
You get a second attempt at the maximum weight. And so you just keep continuing on your journey rather than resetting all the way back at the beginning. And so we can take that with a nutrition example in the same way. It's like, all right, yeah, you got a bad set. Let's regroup and let's continue on our journey after we've re-geared. So
Yeah.
that's great.
Oh, I've never associated it with that, but that's
I
fantastic.
feel like my mind always goes to squats. I've also noticed that a lot of people say that they don't or can't eat healthy because they are too busy. And trust me, and I know you know this as well, busy schedules are a thing when you're a professional. I've had problems with this myself. If I don't prepare and prep in advance, I'm going to have a week where I'm struggling. So do you have any advice that you can give about changing your mindset about the I'm too busy to eat healthy thing?
Yeah, absolutely. And this, I guess, takes two different steps. So, first is identifying what busy actually is. Busy
Mm,
is an arbitrary term, there's no quantitative value to it. That's the
mm,
same thing with saying I'm stressed. Whenever you ask someone how their day's going and they say they're stressed every single time, I always think to myself, like, how are you stressed all the time? That's not healthy. This is a sign to take a step back. Or are you really stressed? Or because you are in the habit of saying that you're stressed all the time, you inherently create stress within yourself.
Mm.
Same thing with being busy. And I do agree that most of us are busy, but it's also accepting that, is your busy a limiting belief that you can't be healthy? Or is it that you just need to take a little bit extra time to plan? Because for me, eating or prepping in advance saves me time. And if I'm a busy person, I want to save time. So if you're going out to eat for lunch every single day and you're busy as you say you are, is that really benefiting you to take an hour lunch to go drive somewhere every day and possibly be like back to work because you hit traffic or something or another? For me, I prep my lunches most of the time. Not always, I'm not perfect, but
Mhm.
most of the time I do prep my lunches and I take my lunch outside. I enjoy it, eat it as it is, and then I can come back to work in a timely manner. And I wasn't scrambling. I didn't have to decide where I had to eat or anything like that. So, first step is identifying if being busy is, again, going back to that self limiting belief. The second step of that is finding ways to prepare that's going to benefit you, because in most cases, it's easier to be healthy than what people think. I know there's fast food and things like that, but most fast food places have grilled chicken options now. They
Mhm.
have fruits as sides. They have salads. They have vegetable kale salad things at Chick-fil-A. You know, is that being busy an excuse? Because healthy has actually become extremely convenient for a lot of people. I know some people don't have that luxury if they live maybe more in a rural area, but in most cases, in the type of city environment that most people live in, it is easier to be healthy than they think. And so it's devising plans of action that can be done that fits their schedule. So whether that's cooking or grocery shopping once a week on Fridays after work, and then having my meals cooked on Mondays and Wednesdays, um, pre-cutting vegetables, or just having a mass cooked like grilled chicken breast on the side so that we can throw it on something. So it's just trying to find different methods to be prepared that fit within your busy schedule. So
Yeah. Yeah. And that's definitely a good point. And I like that, figuring it out what works for you, because what works for somebody else doesn't work
mhm.
for me all the time. I know this will come up in the next the next podcast with the exercise, but we found that we're like the opposite enneagrams. And so for me, if I preparing works, but if I prepare too far out in advance, I'll automatically set myself up to fail, because I'm like, I'm gonna get bored of this
Yeah.
chicken on by Wednesday, and then I'm not gonna eat it. And so I have to shop regularly throughout the week, like 2 to 3 times per week, to buy fresh so that I can keep my mind occupied basically, and my stomach occupied. So figuring out what works best for you is a really, really good point, I think.
Yeah. And I love that you said that, because it was early on in my career, it was a belief that I had to reframe my mind on that, because I was like, why can't you just do it this way? I
Yeah.
mean, I do it this way, it works. But I've definitely come to the realization that everyone's different, and we have to find, us as professionals, we have to find what works for that person. We have all the tools in the toolbox, and now we need to help them to decide what tools are best going to fit their lifestyle, their routines, those types of things.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. One of the most prevalent things that I hear from people is, well, I've tried eating well and I haven't had any success in things like weight loss. So why am I even gonna bother continuing on this journey? And honestly, that hurts my heart really bad for many reasons. First, I think we as people can be overly attached to the physical body. First Corinthians 8:36 says, "Don't you know that you yourself are a temple of God and that God dwells within your midst?" We were created to house the Holy Spirit, and that means that we have to take care of our temple, our body, but
Mhm.
not to the extent that we make our physical body our idol, meaning I'm not going to make let my body be the main thing that I'm harping on. And even so, as a woman with a speckled past of body image issues, I see and feel the struggle. So I understand why someone would ask whether eating healthy is even worth it. I try to reframe people's minds around other indicators of health that actually matter to me.
Mhm.
So maybe you haven't lost a significant amount of weight, but have you gotten off your medications, or are your knee problems a little bit better, et cetera? Can you tell us how you coach the mindset of why does it even matter if I'm not seeing physical results?
Yeah. This one is tough because you are trying to change someone's personal belief that they have. And so, two things is that one is that person has to be open for that belief to change. If that person is not open for that belief to change, I can do my best, but I cannot guarantee that I can change that person's belief. So a person first has to be open and know that there's more to health than weight, which is
Mm.
tough because in our health and fitness industry, weight has been equated to health, and you and I know that's absolutely not true. So it's doing our best as professionals to guide that person. And then two, it's meeting that person where they're at. So if that person doesn't feel like it's worth it to eat healthy because of they haven't lost weight or anything like that, identifying where that person, like why they feel that way. Is it because they have failed diet after diet and they are so unhappy with their body? Of course, they're not going to believe anything else because they're solely focused on their weight because nothing has changed with their weight. And so again, meet them in the middle and possibly suggesting ways that we can make those positive changes with health, but then adding a little bit of a twist to it of making sure that they are still conscious of how they're feeling. So for example, I want you to eat one serving of vegetable this week every day. Is that something you can do? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe it's only 4 days. We make sure we get that serving of vegetable, whatever it may be. But then talking to that person and asking them questions of how they felt. Do they feel different? What did the food taste like? Was it good to you? Did you enjoy the vegetables? And so our job as professionals is to help that person to become self-aware of the other benefits that come with being healthy. Because me just telling that person is not going to change anything if they're not open to changing their belief. But if I can ask the right questions where they can start to really think about what's changing on their daily life, and then they can start to change their own limiting belief by external input.
Yeah, yeah, that's really good. I like what you said way in the beginning of that, where you said they have to be open to change,
Mhm.
because it sort of circled back my whole mindset in starting this podcast, which was I want to show people what research, which is what most practitioners will show people,
Mhm.
and the Bible say about nutrition and exercise, which is important to me because if you aren't open to change in that, the way that I think about that is that if you're not open to changing your heart, you're not going to be able to make those sustainable changes. And so
Mhm.
I've found that people that aren't connected at the heart level have a hard time with this because, and you've probably seen this too, if you have somebody coming to you, let's say with a body weight goal, like they want to drop their body weight, and their reason for dropping their body weight is really, really external and maybe sort of surface level, where it's like, I just want to look good. I want to look better than my friend. I want to, whatever it is, that
Mhm.
they're never going to change. You have to be able to soften your heart and know that you're doing it for a better reason. And so, whatever that reason is, like, I need to come off my medications. I need to do this, whatever. Because if it's all centered around you, you are never going to make that change. And you're never going to, I'll say this, you might make the change, but it'll never be a lasting change. And
Mhm.
so, my whole goal in this podcast is unleashing literally the numbers behind how this stuff works and what changes, but also showing everybody how to change the heart level, because I think that that is the rock and the foundation that you need to have to be able to make these behaviors sustainable.
Oh
So I really
yeah.
like what you said there, because I do. You need to be open to change. If you're not, nothing's gonna keep it up.
Yeah, no, I agree. I had
Yeah.
a client, he very first conversation I had with him was I hate working out. He was only
Mm.
doing it because his girlfriend at the time wanted him to work out. It's been 2 years that I've been working with him. He has now changed and he has created this wonderful workout habit. But something that I noticed with him about probably about 8 months in, he had been doing the workouts, but still every time we talked, it was, I'm sore, I hated this, and things like that. And so I did a little exercise that I like to call is finding your why.
Mm.
Basically, I asked him why he was doing this, but I asked him repeatedly. So he would give me an answer. I want to lose weight. Well, why do you want to lose weight? When we come to the end of the conversation, he felt like he'd never accomplished anything in his life. And if he felt like if he accomplished this for his girlfriend, then he would feel like he's done something.
Mm.
And so we dug deep and we found out his why, like why he was doing something. And like you've said before earlier on in the podcast, is that he had an external motivator to get him started and it kept pushing with him. But when he identified it, his work, his progress, his workouts, and his life has completely 360 changed in the next year that I've been working with them. So you're absolutely right. People have to be able to have that softened heart. And sometimes we can't immediately change that, but I think as professionals, we can help that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that takes persistence on the professional's part. I love that you said that. And we'll talk about the body image stuff in episode 3. But and you guys will hear both of our histories with body image issues, but it is. And I still am plagued with that, where it's like, I think that if I'm a lighter weight or if I have less fat or something like that, some person is going to accept me more. But really deep down, it was that things may have happened in my past and that I need to change the heart level to change the result, meaning that if I change my heart level, I'm not going to care about what other people think, because what they think doesn't actually matter. The only person that matters is my relationship with God. And so, yeah, being open to change is critical. So, but last question, this is off script. If you were to tell somebody that came to you what they can change, one thing that they can change today about mindset around nutrition, simply put, what would you tell them?
That's
One way to change. Yeah.
One way.
Or maybe the best way to start changing your mindset around nutrition.
I would tell them that they can do it.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds so simple and very cliche, I guess, if you will, but because we have this all or nothing mindset, or even all the things that we've discussed in this podcast, sometimes deep down, we don't know we can do it. Sometimes deep down, we feel like we can't because we have failed or we have, not accomplished things in the past. And simply telling someone that they can do it and really mean it and them really feel that can be a world of a difference. Because if at the heart of my body image, just like issues and things like that, if someone, just put their hand on my shoulder and said, I believe you'll make it on the other side, or I believe that you can do this, I think it would have happened sooner. There was never that person that just said, I think you can do it. There were events that definitely facilitated the help of my body image, but I never felt that at a very deep level. And I think we need to know that we can do it as a whole.
Yeah. And I love that you said that too, because I feel like most people would give a practical tip, like you have to do this. But I think that's so important to have the support system there, because we're such a population that self-doubts and doesn't think that we can do it. But if you have that person in your corner, then you're like, yeah, I can do it. Like this is possible for sure. And I love that through your practice, you're able to do that with people, because you work with normal people that may not know things about nutrition and may be self-limiting. And so that's a great thing to do, to start by supporting others. Yeah. Well, it's been fun for sure. I'm so excited that you're here for day 1, and I'm really excited to talk about the next one, which is mindset around exercise. Everybody knows that I've spent 11 years in school with exercise, and mindset around fitness is my favorite thing. And so I'm excited to talk to you tomorrow. But with that, we're going to sign off and we'll see you guys later.